Imagine waking up in complete darkness. You can't see your hands, you can't feel the ground. You don't know if it's day or night, or if time even exists. The only sound is water dripping somewhere in the distance, and the faint distant screams of people who never came back. Now imagine this, not for a night, not for a week, but for months, or even years. This wasn't a nightmare. This was a medieval dungeon, and for many prisoners, it didn't just break their bodies, it erased their minds. Medieval dungeons weren't designed to hold prisoners. They were designed to erase them. Hidden beneath castles, courts, and fortresses across Europe, these underground chambers were built with one purpose: control through fear. But what happened inside them went far beyond punishment, because over time, something strange began to happen to the people locked inside. They didn't just suffer, they changed. Some started talking to voices that weren't there, some forgot their own names, and some simply stopped speaking forever. Historians still debate one question: did medieval dungeons punish criminals, or destroy the human mind itself? To understand why dungeons were so mentally destructive, you have to understand what they actually were. Most were underground stone rooms with no windows, no natural light, no fresh air, only a single heavy iron door sealed shut. Inside it was cold year-round. Moisture leaked through stone walls. Mold grew everywhere. Rats and insects moved freely, even on sleeping bodies. And prisoners were often chained to walls or floors in complete isolation. But the worst part wasn't the filth. It was the silence. No conversations, no sunlight, no sense of time. In many cases, prisoners couldn't even tell if they were awake or dreaming. Modern psychology calls this sensory deprivation, and it is one of the fastest ways to break the human mind. Because without stimulation, the brain begins to create its own reality, and that's when things get dangerous. One of the first things prisoners lost in medieval dungeons was time. Without sunlight, the body's natural clock collapses. Hours feel like days, days feel like weeks, and eventually time stops making sense at all. Historical accounts describe prisoners who believed they had been locked up for decades, when it had only been months. Some stopped sleeping entirely, others slept for so long they couldn't tell dreams from reality. This confusion didn't just cause stress, it caused mental fragmentation. The brain, desperate to create structure, begins inventing patterns that don't exist. Voices, shadows, conversations in empty rooms. And once that begins, it rarely stops. After extended isolation, prisoners often reported seeing things. Figures standing in the dark corners of cells, whispers calling their names, even entire conversations with people who weren't there. Today, we understand this as a psychological response to extreme deprivation. But in medieval times, there was no such explanation. To guards and witnesses, it looked like possession or madness. One documented case from European prison records describes a man who began speaking to invisible judges in his cell, arguing for his release for hours every day. Another prisoner carved eyes into the wall because he believed the walls were watching him. But the most disturbing cases weren't the hallucinations, they were the silence. Because some prisoners didn't break loudly, they broke quietly. Not all prisoners screamed, some simply stopped reacting. They would sit in one position for days, unmoving, unblinking, no response to food, pain, or sound. Modern psychology calls this catatonia, a defense mechanism where the brain essentially shuts down to survive unbearable conditions. But in medieval dungeons, no one understood that. To guards, these prisoners looked like they had become empty shells, alive, but not present. Some records even suggest prisoners who, after release, couldn't function in normal society anymore. They couldn't speak properly, couldn't handle sunlight, couldn't recognize family members, because the dungeon didn't just trap their bodies, it rewired their minds. But here's the most chilling truth about medieval dungeons. They didn't need to torture everyone. The environment itself did the work. The fear of what might happen was often worse than what actually happened. The sound of chains in the dark, the screams from neighboring cells, the uncertainty of execution. Psychologically, this creates something called anticipatory terror. The mind suffers more from imagining pain than from pain itself. And medieval prisons were perfect machines of anticipation. No clocks, no schedules, no answers, just endless uncertainty. Even guards reportedly avoided staying inside too long, because the darkness affected them too. Over time, madness became so common in dungeons that it was expected. Prisoners didn't ask if someone would lose their mind, only when. Some developed obsessive rituals, counting invisible stones, repeating prayers hundreds of times a day, or scratching the same marks into walls until their fingers bled. Others completely lost identity. They no longer remembered their crimes, or even their names. To medieval society, this wasn't a psychological crisis. It was proof of guilt. But in reality, it was proof of something far more disturbing. The human mind cannot survive absolute isolation indefinitely. Medieval dungeons eventually faded from use, but their legacy remains one of the darkest chapters in human history. They revealed something terrifying. You don't need fire or blades to destroy a person. You just need silence, darkness, and time. Because when the human mind is stripped of reality, it doesn't stay empty. It fills itself with something else. And that something else is often far worse than anything real. Lessons for modern society from this history. 1. Isolation can be as damaging as physical punishment. Human beings need connection, purpose, and interaction to maintain mental well-being. 2. Fear and uncertainty often hurt more than reality itself. Living in constant anxiety can be more destructive than facing the truth head-on. 3. Mental health deserves understanding, not judgment. Behaviors once labeled as madness were often symptoms of severe psychological suffering. 4. Freedom is more than physical liberty. Light, community, communication, and hope are essential parts of what makes us human.